On the afternoon of December 5, 1945, 27 men and 6 military aircraft vanished off the coast of Florida without leaving a single piece of wreckage or a drop of oil behind. The events of that evening would eventually give rise to the legend of the Bermuda Triangle. The primary mission that day was designated Navigation Problem Number 1. 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers were tasked with flying a triangular route from Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale out over the ocean. Save for one plane carrying 2 men, each aircraft held a crew of 3. Most airmen had logged roughly 300 hours of flight time, making them highly capable for a routine training run. The squadron, designated Flight 19, was led by Lieutenant Charles Carroll Taylor. Taylor was a combat veteran of the Pacific Theater with 2,500 hours of flight experience. Yet earlier that afternoon, he had arrived late to the training office and actively tried to be excused from leading the flight. He refused to provide a reason, but due to a shortage of instructors, his request was denied. At 2:10 p.m., the flight departed. The first leg of the exercise went entirely according to plan. The squadron flew 56 miles east and successfully executed a practice glide bombing run over the shallow waters of the Hen and Chicken Shoals. About 40 minutes later, another flight instructor in the area intercepted a troubling radio transmission. A trainee from Flight 19 named Edward Powers was asked for a compass reading. Powers replied, "I don't know where we are. We must have got lost after that last turn." The instructor reached out to offer assistance. Lieutenant Taylor responded, stating that both of his compasses had malfunctioned. He reported that he was flying over broken land and expressed absolute certainty that his squadron was currently positioned over the Florida Keys. Taylor was nowhere near the Florida Keys. A probable instrument failure had disoriented the veteran pilot, stripping away his navigational bearings and forcing him to rely entirely on what he could see. Taylor had transferred to Fort Lauderdale from Naval Air Station Miami just 2 weeks prior. He had spent months instructing flights over the Florida Keys, a highly distinctive chain of islands extending southwest into the Gulf of Mexico. From several thousand feet up, the scattered cays of the northern Bahamas looked identical to the land he was intimately used to flying over. Deprived of reliable magnetic headings and lacking a clock to measure elapsed time, Taylor's brain forced the visual data of the Bahamas to fit his preconceived mental map. Taylor believed his squadron drifted south-southwest into the Gulf of Mexico, while in reality they were north of the Bahamas. If lost over the Gulf, flying east returns you to Florida, but over the Bahamas, an eastward heading carries you further into the open Atlantic. Radio intercepts revealed that some of the trainees realized the error. One aviator was heard angrily stating that if they simply flew west, they would reach home. But caught within a strict military hierarchy, the students eventually deferred to their commander's orders. Aviation psychologists refer to this as the posture-first principle. Under extreme stress, the human brain automatically prioritizes ingrained spatial habits over abstract logic. Recognizing spatial disorientation consumes massive attentional resources, leaving a pilot unable to process contradictory information. As the afternoon wore on, a severe winter storm moved in. Winds reached hurricane force at 8,000 feet, and atmospheric haze thickened. The agitated sea states blurred the boundary between the overcast sky and the water, stripping the pilots of a reliable natural horizon and severely degrading their depth perception. Back on the mainland, naval ground stations successfully triangulated Flight 19's radio signals. By 5:50 p.m., they established an electronic fix placing the squadron safely north of the Bahamas and roughly 150 miles off the central Florida coast. But the worsening storm created heavy static on the frequency. Operators instructed Taylor to switch his radio to 3,000 kilohertz, the dedicated search and rescue channel, so they could guide him home. Taylor refused, stating he could not switch frequencies because he had to keep his planes intact. Operating under severe cognitive overload, Taylor prioritized immediate squad cohesion over external navigation aids. By refusing to change the channel, he severed Flight 19's last lifeline to accurate geographic data. Knowing the Avengers were rapidly burning through their fuel reserves, the Navy scrambled a PBM Mariner flying boat with 13 crewmen to search the sector. The Mariner was notoriously accident-prone, carrying so much aviation fuel that airmen nicknamed it the flying gas tank. Just 20 minutes after takeoff, the rescue plane vanished from radar. A passing merchant ship reported seeing a massive fireball fall from the sky, later finding a widespread oil slick on the turbulent water. The intense pressure to mount an immediate rescue had pushed a vulnerable aircraft into highly volatile weather conditions, compounding the human error of Flight 19 and doubling the disaster. By 6:20 p.m., darkness had fallen entirely over the Atlantic. The 5 Avengers were fighting 40-mile-per-hour surface squalls, and their fuel gauges were dropping toward empty. At 7:04 p.m., Taylor made his final transmission. He ordered his men to close up their formation tight. He announced they would have to ditch. When the first plane dropped below 10 gallons of fuel, they would all go down into the water together. A few minutes later, the faint radio communications were replaced by an eerie, unbroken static. At first light the next day, the Navy dispatched more than 300 boats and aircraft to comb through 300,000 square miles of territory. Units from the Royal Air Force based here in Nassau joined the operation. Over 5 days of searching, nobody found a single body, life raft, or piece of debris. The Navy Board of Investigation initially blamed Taylor for the crash. However, after his mother campaigned to exonerate him, the board amended the official record. Unable to produce physical evidence of the wreck, they attributed the loss of Flight 19 to causes or reasons unknown. That ambiguous phrasing opened the door to decades of conspiracy theories regarding magnetic anomalies, time warps, and extraterrestrials. But the physical reality is 27 men flew into a violent storm with empty tanks, over an ocean that never gives its dead back. The disappearance of Flight 19 is a study in the terrifying fragility of human rationality. When external reference points vanish, the mind constructs its own reality and will follow that illusion into the dark.